She waited for an answer, none came. And we began to see what was in her mind. So, chapter 7 of part 2. We were docked. Oh, dude. I have my glasses on. Ah, we were docked. No, we were doomed. We were doomed to suffer tedious waits and delays, and we settled ourselves down to our fate and bore it with a dreary patience, counting the slow hours and the dull days, and hoping for a turn when God should please to send it. The paladin was the only exception. That is to say, he was the only one who was happy and had no heavy times. That was partly owing to the satisfaction he got out of his clothes. He bought them when he first arrived. He bought them at second hand, a Spanish cavalry's complete suit, wide-brimmed hat with flowing plumes, lace collars and cuffs, velvet doublets and trunks, short cloak hung from shoulder, camel-topped buckskin, long rapier, and all that. A graceful and picturesque costume, and the paladin's great frame was the right place to hang it for effect. He wore it when staggered by with one hand resting on the hilt of his rapier and twirling his new mustache with the other. Everybody stopped to look and admire, and well they might, for he was a fine and stately contrast to the small French gentleman of the day, squeezed into the trivial French costume of the time. Oh my goodness. He was King B of a little village that snuggled under the shelter of the frowning towers and bastions of Courdray Castle, and acknowledged lord in the taproom of the inn. When he opened his mouth there, he got a hearing. Those simple artisans and peasants listened with deep and wondering interest, for he was a traveler and had seen the world, all of it that lay between Chinon and Domremy, at any rate, and that was a wide stretch more of it than they might ever hope to see. And he had been in battle and knew how to paint its shock and struggle, its perils and surprises, with an art that was all his own. He was cock of that walk, hero of that hostelry. He drew custom as honey draws flies. So he was the pet of the innkeeper and of his wife and daughter, and they were his obliged and willing servants. Most people who have the narrative gift, that great and rare endowment, have with it the defect of telling their choice things over the same way every time, and this injures them and causes them to sound stale and wearisome after several repetitions. But it was not so with the paladin, whose art was of a finer sort. It was more stirring and interesting to hear him tell about a battle the 10th time than it was the first time, because he did not tell it twice the same way, but always made a new battle of it and a better one, with more casualties on the enemy's side each time, and more general wreck and disaster all around, and more widows and orphans and suffering in the neighborhood when it happened. He could not tell his battles apart, except by their names, and by the time he had told one of them 10 times, he had to lay it aside and start a new one in its place, because it had grown so that there wasn't room enough in France for it anymore, but was lapping over the edges. But up to the point the audience would not allow him to substitute a new battle, knowing that the old ones were the best, and sure to improve as long as France could hold them. And so, instead of saying to him as they would have said to another, "Give us something fresh, we are fatigued with that old thing," they would say with one voice and with a strong interest, "Tell about the surprise at Bellieu again. Tell it 3 or 4 times." That is a compliment which few narrative experts have heard in their lifetime. At first, when the paladin heard us tell about the glories of the royal audience, he was broken-hearted because he was not taken to it. Next, his talk was full of what he would have done if he had been there. And within 2 days, he was telling what he did do when he was there. His mill was fairly started now and could be trusted to take care of no affair. Within 3 nights afterwards, the elves were taking a rest, for already his worshippers in the taproom were so infatuated with the great tale of the royal audience that they would have nothing else, and so besotted with it were they that they would have cried if they could have not have gotten it. Noel Ranguson hid himself and heard it and came and told me, and after that we went together to listen, bribing the inn host her little private parlor where we could stand at the wickets in the doors and see and hear. The tap room was large. It had a snug and cozy look. It had a snug and cozy look, with its inviting little tables and chairs scattered irregularly over to a rugged floor, and a great fire flaming and crackling in the wide chimney. It was a comfortable place to be in on such a chilly and blustering March night as these, and a goodly company had taken shelter there, and were sipping their wine in contentment and gossiping one with another to the neighborly in a neighborly way while they waited for the historian. The host, the hostess, and their pretty daughter were flying here and there and yonder among the tables and doing their best to keep up with the orders. The room was about 40 feet square, and a space or aisle down the center of it had been kept vacant and reserved for the paladin's needs. At the end of it was a platform 10 or 12 feet wide, with a big chair and a small table on it, and 3 steps leading up to it. Among the wine sippers were many familiar faces: the cobbler, the farrier, the blacksmith, the wheelwright, the armorer, the maltster, the weaver, the baker, the miller's man with his dusty coat, and so on. And conspicuous and important, as a matter of course, was the barber surgeon, for he is that in all villages, as he has to pull everybody's teeth and purge and bleed all the grown people once a month to keep their health sound. He knows everybody, and by constant contact with all sorts of folks became a master of etiquette and manners and conversationalist of large facility. There are plenty of carriers, drovers, and their sort, and journeymen artisans. When the paladin presently came sauntering indolently in, he was received with a cheer, and the barber bustled forward and greeted him with several low and most graceful and courtly bows, also taking his hand and touching his lips to it. Then he called in a loud voice for a stoup of wine for the paladin, and when the host's daughter brought it up onto the platform and dropped her courtesy and departed, the barber called after her and told her to add the wine to his score. This won him ejaculations of approval, which pleased him. That's the word they used. That's the word Mike Twain used. Samuel Clemens. Ejaculations of approval, which pleased him very much and made his little rat eyes shine. And such applause is right and proper, for when we do a liberal and gallant thing, it is but natural that we should wish to see notice taken of it. The barber called upon the people to rise and drink the paladin's health, and they did it with alacrity. Here's a new word: alacrity, alacrity, and affectionate heartiness, clashing their metal flagons together with a simultaneous crash, and heightening the effect with a resounding cheer. It was a fine thing to see how the young swashbuckler had made himself so popular in a strange land in so little a time, and without others' help to his advancement than just his tongue and the talent to use it given to him by God, a talent which was but one talent in the beginning, but has now become tin through husbandry and the increment and usufruct that do naturally follow that and reward it as by a law. Can you all want me to teach you about usufruct? Usus and fructus are Latin words. And the property right you have in land in fee simple ownership is the use and the fruits thereof. So you might, for example, if you married someone, they passed away, and you were the spouse, and forced heirship gave you the property, but you weren't on the title, you as the spouse would have both the use and fruit of the land till you passed away. And then it might go, if you had children, it would go back to them. But you get the use and fruit. Ain't none of use of fruit. You get the use and fruit till you pass away. So like if you're a third or fourth wife or whatever, you can tell his older children go away. And that's the Anna Nicole Smith. She got the use and fruit already. So that's what usufruct means. I'm so glad a term that I got to teach for a decade. And I'm glad I remember a lot. Okay.